It's my pleasure to talk with you today about drug recognition experts, DREs, and workplace impairment recognition experts, or WIREs. As cannabis use and other controlled substances use has become legalized across the nation, over 36 states and the District of Columbia now have lawful cannabis use. There have been numerous concerns, primarily from law enforcement, regarding being able to determine whether someone is impaired while operating a motor vehicle. That concern has bled over into the workplace to make a determination as to whether someone is impaired when they show up for work. So DREs, drug recognition experts, or law enforcement, basically conducting these roadside sobriety tests. And WIREs are similarly used for the employment context to determine if someone is showing up for work impaired. Now, the problem with this is cannabis, for example, as well as some other controlled substances, can stay in your system for quite some time, 30 to 45 days, without actually impairing you. So you can use cannabis lawfully, for example, in the evening for sleep, over the weekend, however you choose. And if you report to work on Monday morning, you can be perfectly sober, unimpaired, unimpacted by any of your cannabis use, but it'll still be in your blood, in your hair follicles, and other ways. So it's impossible to test in the normal course through a breathalyzer test or a blood test to actually determine whether someone is impaired, either again for purposes of a road stop or in the workplace. Very recently, the New Jersey Supreme Court, in a case called State versus Olenowski, determined that drug recognition experts were appropriate and that the science backing drug recognition experts was warranted and reliable for evidentiary purposes. At this time, it's basically a 12-step process that drug recognition experts, which is a separate certification for law enforcement, can conduct to determine if someone is impaired while operating a motor vehicle. The challenge with this test is that the court actually lowered the evidentiary standard for admissibility. The standard that was originally applied required that the science of DREs, the 12-step process, be generally accepted within the scientific community. The court lowered that standard and said that it really is up to the judge on a case-by-case basis. And two of the judges on that case dissented, noting the paradox of that fact, that they basically lowered the standard for admissibility to allow it. They lowered the evidentiary standard to allow for admissibility, recognizing that it wasn't generally accepted in the scientific community. In New Jersey, again, legislation was passed a couple of years ago that require all employers in the state to have WIREs on staff. It doesn't matter whether you're a 3-person landscaping company or a 1,000-person pharmaceutical company. You are required to have someone trained as a WIRE to determine whether an employee is impaired. Of course, this is a huge administrative undertaking and a costly one for employers in the state. There are about 400,000, of which I think 87% employ less than 15 people. But it's also expecting individuals to apply that 12-step test, really without any training or otherwise, and recognizing, of course, the purported science behind the test is questionable at best. So you can show up for work, you could be tired, you could be groggy, you could be thirsty, you could have bloodshot eyes because you didn't get a good night's sleep, and that would be the same indicia of determining that you're using cannabis. So there's obviously a host of concerns relating to both DREs and WIREs. It is brand new. The courts out west have been dealing with this a little bit longer than we have. Cannabis, for example, was legal in California as long ago as '96, Colorado as long ago as 2014. But this is becoming, obviously migrating out east with the legalization of cannabis and other controlled substances here. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how courts apply this. And because it's up to judges on a case-by-case basis, you can have a judge in one courtroom finding that the DRE, the drug recognition, accurate determination and relied upon the 12-step process correctly, and a judge in the courtroom right next door making the exact opposite conclusion. So it's really going to be interesting to watch how this all develops. Of course, it's just a byproduct of the legalization of cannabis, hemp, and other controlled substances, and we certainly don't want anyone to operate a vehicle while impaired, but we do need to be sensitive to the fact that the criminal component to this, particularly for minorities, can be harrowing.